have both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in criminal justice. I started my professional career actually on the law enforcement side of things. I was a welfare fraud investigator. I was a child protective services investigator and a probation officer, all before I became a social worker. So my views on criminal justice come from both sides, academic and from practical experience. Working on the law enforcement side of things showed me that there are areas that need more work. When I was probation officer, I really felt like I was not helping my clients as much as I could. I did for 3 years. I did pre-sentence investigation work, which entailed me interviewing clients, interviewing victims of the crime that they committed, talking to collateral sources, meaning family members, friends, employers, schools, getting kind of a full picture of the person, not just as a perpetrator, but also sort of as a human being. I also did supervision. So I worked with clients who had, either were recently released from prison or, were put on probation in lieu of being incarcerated. And, I found that the system there, again, was lacking. There was something that was missing with my training. There was something missing with the actual work that I was doing. And that's what propelled me to actually leave probation and to pursue a degree in social work. When I was a probation officer, I figured out, at least according to my caseload, that there were essentially there's a breakdown of who was going to probably get arrested again and who was going to complete probation successfully. In my estimation, 40% of people on probation were probably going to get rearrested. 40% of people were going to complete without a problem. And it was the 20% in the middle that could go either direction. And it was those 20% that I felt like I had to focus on. And with that focus was the idea of, okay, well, I'm going to see them, try to see them more often, whether it's in the community, in my office, or at their job. And what I think was most helpful for that 20% was the programs that were available for their specific needs, whether it was drug rehabilitation, whether it was job training, and I think, or education itself. And I think those are the things that will help reduce recidivism and incarceration rates. We spend a lot of money on programs. I don't think we're really mindful of how we're spending that money and where that money should be really focused on. I think so. After I left the realm of criminal justice and entered the realm of social work, I actually got to see the other side of things. I worked in several different alternative high school settings, and it really kind of painted the picture and showed me how education or lack of education really kind of affected incarceration and recidivism. I saw students who were overage and unaccredited. I saw students who had been sort of suspended or expelled from their normal school and sent to these alternative sites. And it really reinforced the idea that if there were better educational opportunities, meaning schools were set up or designed in a way to help accommodate these students' needs, I think we would see a lower, recidivism rate, a lower incarceration rate. I think that education is one of the key factors when we're looking at sort of juvenile justice. the difference between inner city school and a suburban school is, I don't think, as different as we suspect. I've worked in alternative settings in both the suburbs and in New York City. And I worked in a place in Brooklyn, which was designed specifically for working with students who, for one reason or another, just weren't earning credits. And oftentimes that reason was they were gang involved or gang affiliated. They had spent time incarcerated, and upon release, they weren't equipped to go back to their school. I think that programs need to take these things into account, and I think finding those right settings would help reduce those rates. The probation department I worked in was in Connecticut, and they actually had shifted away from a strictly law enforcement model, and we're looking at sort of a social work kind of model. They wanted the officers to wear two hats. One as a law enforcement officer, but one also as a social worker. The problem was, as much as the initiative was to sort of change and help the clients in that direction, the training and everything was inadequate. So essentially, they were changing things up, but not equipping the officers in a way to actually make it happen. And I don't know if that was by design, or if that was just they weren't thinking sort of long term of how they were going to make it happen. But even though that was about 8 years ago, I wasn't the most confident in the system to change. I think if the criminal justice system is going to change, it's going to take a lot more effort than what I'm seeing right now. I think that it's up to those in charge to really re-examine what is happening. And I guess there are signs of hope, I suppose. What's going on at Rikers Island and how they've been really investigating sort of these allegations of abuse, makes me think, okay, maybe something's happening. You hear stories and what's going on with sort of the Black Lives Matter movement. What's happening with the body cameras with officers, and maybe things will get better. I certainly, since I've left, it feels like the changes have been sort of incremental, but perhaps that's where the hope should be focused on. Then is not sort of large leaps, but each kind of small step. I've seen some students who working these alternative programs where I was really worried what was going to happen. Whether they complete the program, get their diploma, and still be involved in, drug activity, gang activity, or still be involved in the system. And yeah, it happens, right? Like there are instances where it's just they're so far in, they're too deep with it. It's generational, or the reason why a lot of kids end up in gangs is because that's their family, and they don't have anyone else that really cares about them or takes care of them, so they stay with it. But I've definitely seen the successes. I remember one student in particular when I was working in Brooklyn who just didn't go to school. Like the reason, he was 16 years old and he had 0 credits, and he just didn't care. Whether it was just because the family was involved in the system, or that he thought it was safer to just kind of run with other people and just not go to school. When he came to us, he just wasn't sure if he was going to be able to accomplish anything. And us working with him, we were able to find the one thing that he really cared about, and it was music. And he wanted to be a performer, he wanted to be a producer, and he certainly was talented enough to at least get a start. And the great part was, even though I left before he actually graduated, I went back the following year, and he was there. He walked. He told me about how he got into a school in Long Island, and that he was very excited about it. And it was so nice to see that he didn't give up, and that, you know, not to say I did anything really, but I felt proud to be part of sort of his, you know, a small part of his success story. And, you know, I haven't kept in touch, but I'm confident that he's continued towards, you know, that goal that he wanted.